Today I messed up by taking antibiotics. So a little backstory, my partner came down with a pretty bad case of tinnitus over the weekend, and since we had very close contact a day or so before he started symptoms, I went to my GP and he prescribed me some antibiotics as my tonsils were already a bit inflamed. Anyways, I took them and just a few hours later I started having explosive diarrhea like liquid soup. This didn't worry me much since it's a pretty common side effect. Fast forward to day 2 and I also started pooping bright red blood, so I called my health provider and they assured me that it was fine as long as I didn't feel any pain and that it's actually pretty common when taking antibiotics and that it's probably just hemorrhoids triggered by the diarrhea. Now fast forward again to day 3. Today, I woke up with super bad pain and when I went to the toilet all that came out was Atari red soup. It didn't even smell, it was like something straight from hell, like the devil himself moved into my colon. Now after that horrific experience the pain didn't go away, in fact it got worse. The only way I can describe it is like having eaten some really spicy food and then having diarrhea, but the pain didn't go away, it just got worse and worse, to the point where I literally would have chosen death. So I called 911 but the pain was so intense I couldn't really speak, so they just kinda figured it out. At the hospital my blood was taken and they gave me some for pain medication which helped a lot for 35 minutes, then the pain came back but even worse, yet I had to wait for my blood work to come back, so I'm in the ER waiting room for like 4 hours with an 4 in my arm that hurt like hell and my colon being on fire, and after waiting they just told me that my blood work was fine and that there's nothing I could do except wait it out and take some paracetamol. So what caused this nuclear attack on my GI tract? Apparently the doctor was supposed to prescribe me some pills that protect the lining of my colon. BC, the antibiotic I got is appearing really aggressive and can be lethal if taken without the protective pills. Anyways, I'm home now drugged up and I'm done okay. They gave me like a billion different pills which I have to take at specific times to manage the pain and control the diarrhea, but I still feel it. I think the only substance capable of numbing my nether region properly is fentanyl or something. But the moral of the story is ask your doctor about GI issues before taking antibiotics, and if they seem rushed maybe Google it beforehand. Today I messed up by showing the shop my nudes. Okay, so. This was in no way on purpose. I'm not some crazed exhibitionist. I'm just dumb and in love. But during the first few weeks of dating my now amazing BF I did what most women do, don't lie. We do it, I sent him a few sensual photos. Nothing truly explicit, tastefully done. Fast forward months and months later, the other day, we remembered we had a lovely new photo frame and then yesterday set off to the pharmacy to get a photo of us printed off. We plugged it in and then I realized it showed all of the photos I had sent him. I had forgotten about them. The photos were there on the screen but he hadn't copped them yet. I was panicking and trying to get back to the start screen but it froze. Then he managed to cancel it all, or so we thought, but there they all are again. My boobs for anyone to see. An elderly couple walking past tutting while I tried to shield the screen. We unplugged his phone and deleted all the photos I had sent and managed to get our cute little picture for the frame. I ran out the shop shaking while he paid for the photo. Today I messed up by making a really awkward moment with my crush. I met this girl who works in the building next to mine, and I'm awestruck by her. The last couple of days, I've been trying to move my lunch and break time around to see when she's not busy at work and try to ask her on a date. Today, I felt like I should just make a move and ask her at her work. She works at a beauty salon-esque place, and I just didn't put 2 and 2 together. I walked in, not thinking that she's probably busy with a customer, and asked one of her coworkers if she's still at work. They said yeah and told me where she was. I walked into her work area to see she was busy, and instead of saying I wanted to talk to her and asking when she might have time, my panicking brain spurted out, "Oh, you're busy. I can come back some other time." And I left. It was extremely awkward, and I might have just ruined it all. I'm hoping I can just have a laugh about it when I see her next, whenever that is. Today I messed up by following a hotel clerk into a room to check it out. My job had me leave town for training, and they pay for lodging while you're gone. I wanted to get a nicer room, and so I asked my boss if I could get the nicer room and pay the difference between the single queen room and the king suite. He said I was fine to just get the nicer room, but I was still worried about submitting my expenses report with a huge hotel cost, so I looked for the cheapest suite I could find, called, and made a reservation. Advice: don't look for the cheapest suite you can find. So it was a reputable-looking chain hotel. The room had a jacuzzi, a king-size bed, and a kitchen. It was like $100 a night, and no deposit. When I arrived it was late at night. There were a couple people lounging in the lobby and it reeked of weed. This didn't honestly bother me, as I've been comfortable in much sketchier places. The man at the front desk was noticeably sweaty, and had moderate BO. I gave him my ID and he made a photocopy. I did some paperwork and then it came time to pay. Long story short, I was paying with mostly cash, so I pulled out a few hundred in cash and suddenly the clerk looked really unsettled. I didn't even think about the fact I'd pulled out cash, and I just assumed he was annoyed he'd have to deal with doing 2 payment types, but then he asked if before I paid, I wanted to see the room first. Stupidly, I agreed without a second thought. Until the sequence of events that just happened replayed in my head on the way to the room. I frantically texted my partner to call me so I could act like I needed to take a call. Luckily my partner called right away. The clerk stopped for a second and turned towards me with an annoyed look. I told her I'd call her when I got here, and she saw my phone location had arrived but I didn't call. He turned to keep going to the room, and I stayed on the phone. He kind of just walked in, and tried to get me off the phone so he could tour the room. I just held the phone to my chest and nodded. The next thing is what made me much more sure of his intentions. Finally he led me back to the front desk and I hung up. Back to the task of paying. I was pulling out my wallet and he said, "Sorry, I forgot to tell you. There is a $100 deposit. You could use your cash for that." At this point I apologized and said I don't think I will get the room then. As I was gathering my stuff he says, "How about a $50 deposit?" I just said no thank you and left. I found a queen bedroom available somewhere else. After looking back at the whole thing, I realized I had no clue what his plans were when he got me in that room alone. Maybe he thought I was going to hire services with my cash and wanted a bribe to keep quiet. Maybe he was going to rob me. But I saw his face, and knew his place of work. And why did he look so unsettled as soon as I brought out the cash? And if touring the rooms was protocol, why didn't he ask me to do that before taking a copy of my license? I might be overthinking it, but I think if he was going to rob me, it was going to have to end in some violence because I knew so much about him already. I realize a lot of this story relies on body language that cannot be conveyed here, but he really did have a strong shift of demeanor leading up to showing the room. Today I messed up by thinking I was alone in the quiet study room at work. So our office has a designated heads-down room that is like a library for deep work. Barely anyone ever uses it because the chairs are super uncomfortable, so most early mornings I have the whole space to myself to zen out and prep the day. I also tend to think out loud when I am alone, and I had a big meeting coming up and was really getting into preparing for it, drawing notes, muttering about possible responses, and just generally in my flow state feeling completely relaxed and clicking. Also, I have kind of a sensitive digestion, and so my rushed breakfast plus feeling nervous about the meeting meant the tummy was a-talkin'. And so to release some of that abdominal pressure I did what any human being does. I farted. Not big, not record-breaking, but distinctive, consistent, solid butt puffs beautifully acoustically amplified by the uncomfortable molded plastic chair I was sitting on. Multiple times. All the while never breaking my train of thought and continually muttering about how that meeting was going to go. I definitely thought I was alone. I was not. A few minutes after my third rectal vent, there was a shuffling sound behind me to my left and a guy started to get up to leave, looking incredibly annoyed. I gasped. He was not wearing headphones, and I immediately realized with horror what had happened. Then, being the double-down level awkward that I am, I asked, "Have you been in here this whole time?" "Yep," he replied, not smiling, then left. "I'm pretty sure I have to find a new job now."